So, hello everybody. This is season 1, episode 4 of Bridging Generations with Howard Snooks. And I'm Howard Snooks. And I have a guest with me today. His name is Evan Faber.
Hello, Howard. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you bet. I'm really looking forward to this.
Me too.
But one of the things I like to do, because this is like about bridging generations, and I'm like the old geezer part of the generation, is I do like to tell a dad joke to start. So why do you think seagulls don't fly over bays?
Oh, I have a hunch. But I'm going to say I don't know.
Well, they would be called bagels if they did.
I would imagine. And I would probably eat more of them, I think, if they were. Yeah.
Okay, so Evan, welcome to
Thank
the
you.
show. I'm looking forward to it. You sort of caught my eye because, we know each other through the Highland City Club. And,
Yes.
and your Peaky Blinder cap, is very distinctive, and you really know what you're doing and stuff, it seems like. So I just thought, well, you'd be a really interesting guy.
Thank you very much.
And, this is a generation thing. You told me that you're 45 years old, and
Yes.
my kids are 43 and 40.
Wow.
We're kind of in that same. I would be 31 when you were born.
Wow. Lifetimes have been lived in that amount of time. Yeah.
Well, it makes me think of my grandmother, who, when my parents had their 50th wedding anniversary, she was there, and my mother was their third child. So you can picture, she was getting up there. And she goes, God, I must be old. My kids are in their 70s.
Wow.
And so I think that my kids are in their 40s.
Hard to imagine. Hard to imagine. My goodness, because at every moment in our lives, at least for me, that's the show. It sort of feels like that's the reality. And as I've gotten older, I've come to understand, there's less I know and there's more possibilities. But to hear something like that, it really just frames things. There's so much more to travel and to see and to do.
Yeah. And, it's like, how did the years go by so quickly?
Yeah.
That's the other thing.
Yeah. I remember I read in a scholastic newspaper in elementary school, and it said, when you're 9, a year is 1/9 of your life. When you're 2, it's a half of your life. When you're 45, it's 1/45. And so even just mathematically, it sort of picks up some speed, and it has.
Right.
It has.
Well, I noticed that Christmas came around a lot faster.
Yes.
The older I got.
Yeah, which is a benefit. The holidays seem to always pop up. I love that.
Well, so one of the things I like to do is, like I've told people a little bit about me. I'm from Durango, Colorado. I'm from this ancient old pioneer ranching family. And I got my degrees, my MSW and PhD in social work. So I practiced as a clinical social work for 45 years. So right when you were born was when I started my career. And I just got kind of inspired about this whole bridging generations thing. And I was a guest on a couple of podcasts with some younger guys, and this is sort of what got me inspired. And so here we are. And maybe you can fill me just a little bit about you.
Sure.
You've got a story here. I could tell you had an interesting story when I met you. So but I don't know all the details.
Sure. I'll start a little bit with my background. Like maybe professional background. I've spent part of my career in hospitality. I was a sommelier at a fine dining restaurant. So diving into the world of wine was absolutely so amazing. I traveled around the world training 4- and 5-star hotels and resorts and restaurants. I have been a distiller.
A distiller?
So I've distilled whiskey and gin. I've worked on reality television shows out in LA. And I would say that a large part of my career has been focused on strategy and storytelling and helping organizations, whether it's a small entrepreneur or whether it's a billion-dollar brand, tell their story, identify their strategy of how they're going to grow. And so I've worked with some Fortune 500 brands to do it across every sector you can imagine, and startups. And big windfalls for them when
Mm.
you can tell your story authentically and effectively and align it with who you are as an organization, not just what you're saying. Great things can happen. So I've done that for many years, and I've also on the like personal side, I've been in a couple ballets. I've written over 200 songs, so I there's a creative side to what I love to do as well. But
You've
that's
been in a couple of ballets.
ballets, and
Well,
yeah,
let's start with that.
sure. Let's start
Okay.
there. Yeah. So I can't dance, so that's another. Well, it depends on the occasion. But I had a friend who was the ballet studio director, and it was a Christmas Carol, and so they needed a Scrooge, and so I guess I give off Scrooge vibes, and so I'll tell you, I remember walking into the ballet studio, and the first time I saw live ballet, it was backlit. So I walk into the room they were practicing, and I just see these beautiful silhouettes, and the music was playing, and it's just so striking. So I got to be kind of a comedic person, but all around
Wow.
me were these graceful, wonderful dancers. So I did that for a couple years, and those were the two ballets.
It's like a whole other world, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I did some modeling and commercial acting, and when I was out on the runway, it was like nobody will really believe what it's really like to do this, and nobody believed I would be doing this either.
Amazing.
But I did do it, and it was a real kick. But it was part of that same thing. There's something magical about those sorts of experiences.
Oh my gosh.
It's when you don't know anything about it, especially if you just go, that's what it's like.
Yes.
This is what the dressing rooms are like. This
Yeah.
is what the actual choreography is.
Yeah.
This is how you have to walk.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all these funny things.
Totally. And whether it's ballet or whether it's fashion or modeling or chocolate or coffee or wine, I think each one of those fall under like a language of life that you can
Yeah.
learn.
No kidding.
And you learn all of the nuances and the words and the vocabulary
Right.
and all of it. And so ballet was one and that I learned.
So how old were you when you did that?
I was 28, let's say.
28.
So, wow, it's longer than I thought.
Well, because what I'm trying to do is that's a lot of stuff to have done.
Yeah.
As a adult of
Yeah.
24 years
Yeah.
or so, let's say. I mean, you did some of it when you were younger, but still, that's a lot of different things that you've done. You have more hats than your Peaky Blinders hat. It sounds like.
This is true. I never had like well, I just wanted to be inspired creatively and intellectually. And so that was what I put out into the universe. And as I grew, those were the opportunities that presented themselves. And I went after each one. And so I've lived these beautiful professional chapters over the years that have given me some really interesting perspectives.
So this raises two questions for me. One is how you segued from one to another, because that sounds kind of interesting to me. And who helped you do that, or was this a one-person show? And I'm sure part of it is a one-person show. It's not like, but I have an idea that there's probably some people along the way who have been helpful to you. And like these are reinventions, really, I would say, of a whole number of them.
Yes. And I'm so grateful for the people in my life that have helped me explore these chapters. I would say it's been one man living it, but so many people helping to make these things come true. So, for example, when I was transitioning from hospitality into distillation, I had studied beverage. That was my focus in hospitality. And so I approached the owner of the restaurant group and said, look, you own restaurants. I'm not interested in being, in the floor of the restaurant here, but I would love to stay connected. He said, what do you want to do? I said, I would love to learn how to distill and open a distillery. So he said, okay, let's do that.
He just said, like,
yeah,
that sounds like a good idea.
Okay, let's do that.
Wow.
And so here is an incredible person that fostered a dream. I spent 2 years learning how to distill whiskey and gin, and we had the business plan set up. We had the line of spirits. I had the names and the stories, and Unfortunately, the business deal, we just couldn't get the right funding and get the runway we needed. But the branding agency that we were going to hire to do the packaging said, hey, we liked the stories that you told about these, liquors. Do you want to learn how to do branding and strategy for real?
So they noticed you.
They noticed.
Uh-huh.
And I said, I would love to do that. And so that started that whole segue. But somebody that you talked about, the people involved, somebody first had to say, oh, yes, I would like you to follow your dreams. Even if it's not quite aligned with what I'm doing in my life, I want to help support you. And on the other side, somebody had to say, you don't have any experience here, and we believe in sort of who you are, and we will bring you in. And so both of those gentlemen were mentors to me, and so definitely.
Yeah, so the mentor thing is coming up. There were two mentors.
Yes, yes.
And they, like, I don't know, this is maybe, I don't know if it's difficult or easy to, but what did they see in you? Like, what was it that made them think, well, this guy's worth, so what caught my eye was like, oh, he seemed like an interesting guy.
Maybe. I think that's part of it. I think who we relate with in our lives bring out aspects of ourselves. And so maybe a part of it was they just initially liked the connection, liked a vibe. I liked their vibe. We got along. We inspired each other. I can get passionate about pretty much anything.
Oh, okay. So that sounds significant.
Yeah.
Say a little more about that.
My goodness. Okay. Well, I think this would begin with a mentor. I'll name another one. Back in second grade, I had a teacher named Mrs. McMillan, and Mrs. McMillan had us do an idea book. Just write down our ideas as kids. And one of the exercises that she did was she told us to compare two things. And I wanted to compare two of the furthest things apart from each other and see if I could bring them together.
Huh.
And at the time, I was 7 or 8, whatever, it was an apple and a window. And I remember this out of all the memories of my life because I started thinking and seeing like there's surface understandings of things. And then there's, just a chasm of ways you can engage and interact and learn about something. And so this started my mind kind of racing around the world of ideas and possibilities. And as I was thinking about it, I remembered I would lie in bed again as a kid, and my mind would start to go from one image. I think about one thing, I think about another thing. And I was in an observer state. Now that I look back, I was watching my mind, and I actually told it to speed up. Can you go faster? Can you go further? And instead of being the person thinking about it, I was the person watching my mind, almost riding the mind. And this is all, we'll get back to your question, but I realized that I just loved the power of ideas and the power of things. And so I have remained kind of curious and passionate about pretty much every single topic, and it goes back to that sort of languages of life. I want to speak as many of them as I possibly can.
Well, so you're a quantum kind of guy, I would say.
Oh my gosh. I mean, yeah, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. If we're in the age of information now, I think we're about to break into the quantum age next. And if we thought we knew the world now, we're going to discover that we've only seen it, but not known it. And we're going to discover it again very shortly. So quantum to me is huge.
And it's so interesting how you were using your mind as if it were, Claude or Chat GPT or some sort of AI thing. Totally. Is kind of how you were doing it.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
As separate from myself.
Yeah.
And not thinking like I'm not thinking. I'm just observing this thing, which is great.
So you're a man ahead of your time.
Not by the way I dress.
Right. You're very classically very classically dressed. And you generally do. That's how I
Yeah.
Well, so So you're in the seventh grade or second grade.
Yeah.
You're 7. Where did you grow up?
I grew up outside of Washington, D.C. in McLean, Virginia. And we lived there till I was about 12. My dad was an attorney. He wanted to be a drummer in a rock and roll band. So as soon as he could say goodbye to the law and pursue happiness, that's exactly what he did.
He did.
So moved a young family across the country to Colorado, into the mountains from the Beltway, DC life, to the foot of Pikes Peak.
Manitou?
Manitou. That's exactly right. That's where I went to high school. And it taught me a lot about what to value in life, that move.
You Colorado Springs people, like there's a certain distinctive sort of quality. I've known some before. They're all characters.
Oh yeah,
and Manitou Springs really draws.
Especially,
it's a lovely town.
It is.
I think it's a wonderful town.
They've done an amazing job continuing to invest in it and continuing to have it flourish and blossom. So it's wonderful to always go back and see. Yeah.
So you were in middle school then when you moved?
Yes.
What was that like then? From McLean, Virginia to, so making friends. I mean, there's that whole thing, the whole school thing, the whole living a different life.
Yeah. Middle school, I don't know what your middle school experience was, but I don't know if it's the easiest moment in life.
Well, I'm so old, it was called junior high.
Junior high. I think that still exists somewhere.
Does it?
I think there are distinctions that I don't
really
know about in terms of what grades
fall
under junior, but this was a middle school. And so I started it at 7th grade and it started at 6th grade. So already the expectation was that I've had a year of experience now in middle school, which I hadn't had. And it was certainly a culture shock. And I struggled. I struggled at the beginning. There were some good friends that I had, but finding my new place in that environment was a big challenge. I remember in 7th grade, AP English, we read Count of Monte Cristo. And so I loved that book, not the revenge part, like I wasn't out to get people who had wronged me. But what I loved was how he cultivated all of these appreciations. And he was so remarkable in so many different ways. I would like to cultivate that. So here's a fictional mentor, So there's another take, and because I really, and maybe not a mentor, because there's an influencer, there's a mentor, and then there's a role model. And I've been thinking about kind of those 3 things.
Oh, that's interesting.
I think he was more of a role model. And I would say out of the 3, role models might be the most dangerous, because I would argue that a mentor, the difference would that a mentor has the most holistically invested in the person, in the mentee. That doesn't mean in totality, but by and large, they might be the most invested. An influencer has some investment, but it might be kind of transactional. But it might not be holistic. They might not know you at all.
Right.
But they have power, and they're a powerful force. And then a role model usually doesn't even know you exist in the planet, but they just are somebody who you want to emulate. And which is why we have so many broken hearts of never meet your heroes, and we discover that our role models are real people because they never asked of us for them to be their role model necessarily. Some do, some don't, but we have to protect ourselves with our relationships with our role models, because we're asking of them, help me be me. And that's sort of an unfair request for somebody who's trying to be themselves in a way as well.
I think role model, it's the most dramatic of the 3, because it's like their lifestyle, really. It's not just like what the mentor decides, they sort of decide more how they're going to. But the role model, like you said, is not really aware of what it is. And then they just are who they are. And you go, oh man, I like to live that guy's life.
Yes.
And they're going to, and you read every once in a while, these questions, anyway, I do on my social media feed. They go, so who's a movie star you met that really disappointed you, because they were rude? And they list, different people, that sort of thing.
Totally. That's so hard.
It's so disappointing.
That's so hard. I think we're looking to be let down in that situation because, I mean, yes, they're living a life that puts them in the public spotlight, but they're still people in the public spotlight and have good days and have bad days. And if I was judged by how I showed up 24/7, 7 days a week, it'd be a rough go.
Well, were you an idealistic kid?
Yes.
Well, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I was on a hike with a friend of mine and we were arguing about the nature of war. And he was saying that it is inevitable. It is always going to happen. Look at human history. It is in our DNA. And like, that's the way that it is. And how am I going to argue? This is how idealistic I can be. I said, okay, I can't argue with any of that. I'll agree with you when we get to the top of the mountain. How about that? And so we hiked and we got closer and closer to the summit. But I had hiked this route before and I knew that it was a false summit.
Oh.
And that the top of the mountain that we could see and that we could point to was not in fact the top of the mountain. And so I believe with anything that there is room for doubt, that the truth lies beyond what we can see and what we can point to and what we know. And it's when we can jump into that space and sort of pull into our reality ideas or possibilities that really breakthroughs can happen. And so even with the topic of war, which is so hard to say that it's not going to be an always thing, I think it could be in a sense, because I cannot point to the true top of the mountain. So what are we going to pull from that chasm into reality? I want to pull, I want to pull more of hopefully some sort of enlightenment and peace and continue a march toward betterment of all of us.
Wow, there's the Hobbesian approach and the Lockean approach, and I can never remember which one it is, but you're one of those.
Okay.
Like you think that like people are essentially good, and then I think that's Locke, and Hobbes is the other, where you really have to control people because they have such internally they have to be socialized and have to learn how not to feed their worst selves interiorly. And you seem like you would be more like on people are essentially good.
I think if you pressed me to answer honestly, I would say that. I will also say that I love language. And one of the things I love is looking at the etymology of words. So going back and looking at the history of how the word came to be and all of the meanings. And people is an exceptional one. Because I wanted to answer that question. Are people fundamentally good or evil? Well, let's look up the word people. And I won't get it exactly right, but I looked it up and it said that part of the word means to lay waste and destroy. I thought, oh, wow. And then the other part meant to rejuvenate and grow. And so even in the word people lie our two extremes.
Dichotomy.
What do we want to manifest? What do we want to see in ourselves? What do we see in others? The whole world of possibility is even in the word that we label ourselves as.
Well, that's very interesting. So I'm learning something very interesting here. Now, this makes so you're idealistic. You think people basically are good, but there's a side to them.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And you're adventurous, I would guess. Just the way you're talking about it, like you take, you sort of can't see the summit, but you're heading for the summit, and you're going to take what you can out of your journey and bring it into yourself. So that requires, I don't know, kind of a, fearless approach, or maybe not fearless, but not acting on, not responding to fear. That would be my take, but I'm just asking you if you'd say that.
Yeah, I think for me, it has been to think fearlessly, but then refine intelligently. And then the third piece would be act boldly. If I can do those three things, then I might land in an okay spot. So I like the idea of having this, people are good and idealistic, but also let's be aware of the reality of the world, and let's be aware that there are good actors and bad actors. And so it's not just Pollyanna, it's layers, I think. And and this also goes back to quantum, and I think right now our brains, the way I'll just say me, it's binary. It's on or off. It's this position or this position. I think or is going to fade and is going to rise. I think.
Why? Well, maybe you can tell me.
Yeah.
I have that question. Why do you think that?
Why do I think that?
But I don't mean to interrupt.
No. And I just hear in the fringes of conversations what different people are looking for and asking for of themselves, of their friends, of their leaders. And I think they are looking to bridge a polarization, bridge the divides, bridge some of this pain and some of this hurt that we could be feeling. And in order to do that, being able to hold positions that seem counter to each other as sharing truth, and holding them both as virtuous, maybe different expressions of a very different expressions of a similar idea, but more of like almost a mental. Right now we have a position on an argument or an issue. In quantum, I believe there's a superposition,
right?
Where kind of two states exist at the same time.
I love that whole idea.
Yes,
superposition.
I think that will begin to happen mentally as we begin to see it emulated in technology. We can do that. We can have a quantum mind, and I think that will become much more interesting and lead to the advancements that we need to have societally to continue our evolution in a way.
So you're a millennial. And you're one of the very first one of the first years where they're officially called, because I know this because of my own kids.
Yes.
My son was born he was born in 1982. So he must have been born in 1980?
80.
So were you the class of 1999 in high school?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Do you think that millennials are contributing to this shift away from dividing things up, have and happen, into a superposition?
Yeah, I mean, kind of moving from maybe binary thinking to quantum thinking.
Yeah.
Two things. One, I am a millennial. I also subscribe to this sub-generation, which isn't official, but this idea of Zennial, where if you were to read off what Pew has written up about millennials, there'd be some that would hit, some that would not. Same thing with Gen X, which I'm right on the other side of.
Right.
So I've got some Gen X friends that want to pull me into Gen X, even though I'm labeled millennial. So there's this sub-generation of Zennials that embody kind of a little of Gen X, a little of millennial, and I feel close to that. So here's in answer to your question of whether millennials are contributing to the binary quantum. In marketing, in advertising, you can segment an audience in a couple ways. You can segment an audience demographically. So age, what they do for a living, household, education. Okay. And you can also segment them psychographically. Attitudes, behaviors, beliefs.
Right.
I believe that it's more of a psychographic than a demographic. So do I think that millennials as a whole, tough to say. I don't know them all. But do I believe that there's a powerful psychographic extending across generations that is moving this forward? I do. And I also think that each generation sort of picks up a little bit, has some ideals of where they want to go. And then maybe life gets in the way of a generation reaching some of those things, but still carry that torch. And maybe that next generation can push the needle in certain ways or not. I don't know if that seems true to you.
Well, I want to hear more about psychographics.
Sure.
Because I just think that's a very interesting idea.
Totally.
And I'm not familiar with the word. I think I'm familiar with a lot of what you're talking about with it, but I'm not familiar with that term. So just can you say a little more about it?
Absolutely. So this was where I've spent like a bulk of, a company would come to me, we're launching a brand. It's going to be in, 60 different countries, whatever. How do we position ourselves? And so that's where you're looking at, okay, who is the audience? Who are you for? Now, people are irrational creatures. We decide with our heart, we justify with our mind. You could also call it system one thinking, system two thinking. Thinking fast, thinking slow is a great book on it. And so what businesses need is they need an emotional hook. And that emotional hook, it can't really connect with an age necessarily, or like a level of education. It connects with behaviors, attitudes, and beliefs. And so when I'm looking at an audience for an organization, I'm saying, what motivates them? What are their actions? What are their shared beliefs? And now in that are the emotions that we can connect with to tell a story. This is speaking broadly across many different categories. There are certain businesses that target a demographic specifically,
Right.
But just generally speaking, a lot of emotional storytelling happens when we connect, not demographically, but psychographically. For example, I was speaking with the former CMO of McDonald's, $1.6 billion advertising budget at the time, mentioned that they target a 31-year-old. 31-year-old is old enough where the younger folks are looking, wow, they got their stuff together, they got the car and the apartment and the job. I want
Apple
that.
Watch.
The Apple Watch. And then the older generations look back and we're like, like that is a sweet spot. And so therein lies, yes, they're picking a demographic, but they're also picking like the behaviors and the attitudes and beliefs that were embodied by that 31-year-old as well. And so that's a little bit about psychographics and demographics in that regard. But I'll sum it up to say psychographics is summing up an audience based on attitudes, behaviors, and beliefs versus segmenting it based on education. So even with this podcast, what are the shared attitudes, behaviors, and beliefs that your audience might have, despite their differences? Maybe it's curiosity or something. Yeah.
It might be curiosity. Yeah, we'll see. We'll have to see. I'll look forward to see the comments.
Yeah. Me too. Maybe.
You know what that made me think of when you're talking about the 31-year-old is, do you know how old people are supposed to be in heaven?
No.
33.
Really?
Because that's how old Christ was supposedly when he was crucified. And so this is like what I guess in the Apocrypha or something, kind of a Catholic belief that people are 33 years old that are in heaven. It's pretty close to 31.
That's a good age. So they're targeting heaven. Right. Yeah.
My son was born on my 33rd birthday.
Really?
Yep.
Wow. Yeah. Yep. And synchronicity. Yeah.
And if I had been your dad, I would have been 31 when you were born.
Amazing. Yeah. It's absolutely incredible.
Well, part of what I think people, I hope they think about is their relationship to their parents and people of their parents' age and what that's like, and you mentioned your dad who wanted to be a rock star. And we don't know what happened to him yet. And just fill me in a little bit about your family.
Yeah. Also, I would put them in the mentors. So my parents, I've had a bad problem of they've always been cooler than me. My dad was absolutely brilliant, an attorney. We used to read a dictionary of cultural literacy. We would flip to a page and go around. Do you know what this means? This was our dinners. He knew everything in that book. We accused him of reading ahead. And he navigates people, understands people, and can connect with people in that way. My mom, fun-loving, free-spirited, wise, smart, much more like heart on the sleeve, like say how you feel. Don't try and position everything.
A Woodstock mom.
Yeah, Woodstock mom. Yes, yes. And they both like the Moody Blues. That's how they met.
Oh, is that right?
So that was, I think my mom stole my dad's records, and
Whoa.
there it went. So I had those wonderful forces,
Yeah.
be honest, but also like recognize the people in play. And then my sister, younger sister, is an artist. And I've put her as sort of my empathic North Star, as I'm pretty cerebral and she's very heart driven. And so she's been somebody who I have looked to grow and evolve, to learn from her how she receives the world as she receives the world. So that's my family, pretty diverse group, and lucky, so fortunate to have them in my life.
So your family still all lives in Colorado?
Yes. Yep. They're still, they live in Colorado. My sister's now 10 minutes from me, which is great.
Oh,
yes.
Okay. Because I was going to ask, what did your family think about you moving to Boulder?
Oh yeah, well, they loved it. We had been coming up to Boulder for quite some time, and they liked Boulder. I mean, Manitou's a funky little town in Colorado Springs, and Boulder's a funky little town in Colorado as a whole.
Right.
But they'd appreciated sort of like the confluence of art and technology and intellect and outdoors. I mean, there's so many beautiful subcultures here. They were thrilled.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
My grandmother, when I told her I was moving to Boulder, says, the wind blows up there. So that was kind of what Boulder was famous for, because, she was like, I have all these ancient old pioneer ranching family ties here.
Yes. I see. So they knew the climate.
They knew that sort of thing.
Yeah. What a great lens.
And my parents, if I'd wanted to go to see you, I'm sure I could have, but they really guided me to go to CSU because it was the land-grant university. And that's where, if you're from a ranching family, the land-grant university, though, it used to be called Colorado A&M years and years ago. So in their minds, that's where they really wanted me to go. And I went to Boys State when I was in high school, and it was held at, it's this program, I don't even know if it's still around, but it was designed to get people interested in politics, is basically what it was. And it was held at CSU, so I kind of knew the campus. So when it came time to go to college, okay, I'll go to CSU. But I was very happy there. I really liked undergraduate school at CSU. But my life would have been different if I'd gone to CU.
Totally. And what's the significance of from the city? So what's the significance of a land grant university?
Well, they really provide support to agriculture. A&M is agricultural and mechanical. So it was designed to help pioneer ranchers, and that CU was some sort of other thing. They didn't really know what on earth they taught there, but.
I worked with CSU a lot when I was in the beverage world. I was a big proponent of Colorado wine, and so I met with the state enologist, state winemaker, state viticulturalist, if I'm recalling correctly. And CSU is the place for all of that, and a great town, another town that has done wonders in terms of growing. Fort Collins, incredible place too.
Yeah, there's this this town in Disneyland that has been designed, and it was based on Fort Collins.
No kidding.
Because the guy that designed the Disneyland town is from Fort Collins.
Wow.
So the downtown of this town in Disneyland is downtown Fort Collins.
I could see that.
Yeah.
I could see that.
No, you're right. It is another. Fort Collins is really an impressive place now. And what do you think of Boulder?
I think Boulder is at an amazing moment, an incredible moment. Boulder has an identity in this country, and it has a reputation in this country, but that has changed over the years. And I think Boulder is in a moment of self-discovery. It is waking up into what it is today. And it's still it makes an incredibly powerful statement. who's here and what's happening, but it's different than what it was, and it's still undefined, and it's still being fed culturally with Sundance and with industry, all of the different technology sectors that are here, and a powerful university. And so I think it is for lack of a better phrase at the moment, waking up into itself again. And that comes with growing pains, letting go of some long-lasting narratives to embrace some new ones. And it's trying to figure out what it is. So it's almost like in its puberty almost again.
Interesting.
So we talk about people and generations. Well, what about communities that are the embodiment of multiple generations and changing?
Well, this makes me think, are you familiar with Nextdoor?
Sure.
Okay. So if you read Nextdoor, you would think Boulder was a hellhole. It's like, nothing, people are just get so angry. And I always think they're a bunch of baby boomers that are talking this way. And they're all going, it's not the way it used to be. It's losing its soul. It's homeless. I mean, just goes on and on and on. And it just has always struck me that they're missing the whole idea that a city isn't going to just stay unless it's Disneyland or unless it's Williamsburg, Virginia or something. Yeah. It's not going to stay. It has to grow and evolve and develop.
Yeah.
Like my great-great-great-grandparents came to Boulder in 1859, and they ranched out kind of north of where Erie is now. Well, when would they have decided that, this area had grown enough, they wanted it to stay just that same way, and they didn't want any more newfangled ideas coming in? When, I have no idea what they thought about that, but they were in a position also to either go, go Boulder, or go, or we need to keep things the way that they are.
And where did they settle out? Where do you feel like they were? Were they more of the go? Do you have a sense?
Well, my great-great-great-grandfather's biography was in this. It's called The Real Pioneers of Colorado, was the name of so he was like one of these, because he was one of the very first people to come. And then he went back to get his wife and daughter after a couple of years. But they said he was very interested in the most innovative ways of ranching that there were. And he was really involved in the community. Like, he was on the committee that sort of determined where Baseline Road was going to be. And Baseline Road, this was before it was a state. It was, to the north was Nebraska, to the south was Kansas territories. And Kansas territory was a slave holding territory, and Nebraska was a non-slave holding. So the termination of Baseline was a very significant road. So he's on the committee. I mean, I just happened to read that. It just what it means is that he just was quite involved, in the whole development of the community.
Incredible. So you could infer where he might have landed.
I think he would have been a progressive person.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think, as I was younger, definitely, progressive ideals. I think that we can still improve as a people. And also the idea of checks and balances.
Yeah.
Finding that balance of go, but also the restraint of questioning, okay, well, what do we have? Why is it important? And unfortunately, balance is a dopamine suppressant. Although, like, the more radical things get, the more balance might actually release dopamine, as it's finally like a relief from everything else. But I don't think that unchecked progress is great, even with wonderful ideals. In some areas, yes, more than others, but also, what is the valuable interplay of let's slow down, let's ask some questions, I'm against that move. Let's pause for a moment. And right now it's still like a shouting match, it would seem to me, versus what are the shared truths? Maybe that's my idealistic hope.
Huh. Well, like when I was counting up all the things that you've done, I thought he hasn't just done this just in Colorado. He's lived around different places. Where are some of the other
Yeah.
places you've lived?
So I've lived in Colorado. I've lived in San Francisco. I lived in LA. Yeah, and then DC. And I've traveled a little bit professionally.
Mhm.
But those are kind of the home bases of where I've been. So, I remember living just off of Haight and Ashbury, which was the home of the hippie movement. And
Yeah.
there was a beautiful Gap store there. So I don't know if the hippie movement quite succeeded, since there was a huge department store.
Well, you've
sort
seen
of,
Times Square too, right?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, yeah, so there, LA was a whole different story.
Mhm.
West Hollywood, I think I was there for a while. Um, but yeah, that's bouncing around a little bit. Um, and in that and in travel around the world, it's funny, like it's the little differences that sometimes are more striking than the big cultural differences, that maybe inform what we do. Um,
Well, the other places you mentioned are really urban areas.
Yeah.
And Boulder isn't really urban. It's not suburban.
Yeah.
I don't know what you would call it, really.
Yeah.
But it's not big enough to be urban, I don't think.
I don't think so, but it's trending there.
Mhm.
I think, are we a town or are we a city at this point? And not just talking by population numbers. How do we see ourselves? Are we the town of Boulder? Or are we a city? And we're somewhere in between the two.
Right.
And most for the last 8 years, actually, I've been living up in Netherlands. So there's that's and if we think Boulder is windy, Netherlands, you could use a chain as a windsock. The winds can pick up like crazy. Yeah.
Are you in Netherlands now?
I moved down. Now I'm in the flats.
Oh.
Now I'm in the flats, but 8
Yeah.
years up in Ned.
Huh. What an interesting town that is.
Totally.
Yeah. So the people are, and then the horrible fire that destroyed.
Yes. The whole shopping center.
Yeah.
That was like a week before I moved.
Wow.
And it was just so sad. I had gone to that brewery with a friend maybe 2 days before. Very nice brewery that was there, and a great pizza place. And so it was sad to see the heart of the town like that. But thank goodness it did not spread further. And we'll see what that town does with the opportunity to rebuild. And so hard, so many different businesses. That was really tough.
I mean, crises equal opportunity, I
Yes.
think.
Yes.
See, I'm a
Yes. So you
positive thinker.
are the same in that regard.
Right,
I like
right,
that. I like that.
Right.
I think with Boulder, there's so many different factions and so many different interests. And you have a lot of really good intended and talented people working on the advancement of Boulder. I'm on the board of Downtown Boulder Partnership.
Oh, are you?
And so I see firsthand the intersection between the city, between the chamber, between Visit Boulder, between Downtown Boulder Partnership, between private business owners. These are really talented and smart people.
Visionary.
And
too,
visionaries.
Yeah.
And some of the challenges are beyond, any one person, any one organization. And the moment we can continue to try and build the coalitions that, hey, this is a problem. Let's try and not point the finger. Let's figure out how we can get there together. What do we need to do? I've seen change made when a group of people said, this is a challenge. We're going to help create the change, and not in an antagonistic way of picking up the slack of something, but in a way that's like, you're spread thin, you're working as hard as you can. How about we help fill a gap? And everybody involved said, great. And there were advancements made. And that happened very quickly. And so I don't know if Nextdoor has the full purview of the underworkings. And there's an amazing podcast that looks at posts on Nextdoor and has improv comedians.
Oh, does it? Oh, God.
Riffing on them.
Really?
It's amazing.
Oh, I wouldn't.
So,
I wouldn't, because I laugh on that.
Oh, amazing.
But I started something on Nextdoor that I'm proud of. I started posting photographs of scenes around, scenery things, and now everybody's doing that.
I love that.
So because I thought you need to do something besides this damn city council. So I started doing that.
That's wonderful. But what was the first scene you posted?
Let's see, what was it? It was a sunset.
Hmm.
Well, it was a sunrise.
I like that.
But the one I got the most likes on was a whole gigantic flock of Canada geese had landed on this golf course that's close to my house on 55th Street. And so I was walking, that's one of these daily walks I take. And I heard all this honking and honking. And then finally I turned the corner and saw them. And so I took this video of these Canada geese, and I'm in back of a chain link fence. So, but somehow the video just came together. People just loved that.
That's
video.
fantastic. Canada geese, they've got their own swagger. I don't mess with Canada geese.
Yeah, they don't really appreciate being messed with.
No, so that's great. I love that you started that. I think that is a beautiful thing. If we can use these platforms to broaden the conversation a little bit more, that would be great.
But the other thing I thought of as I was listening to you was that this is an example of what you said was you can get passionate about anything because now you're involved in this board and you're going gung-ho on this board. So what are some other things that you've done that, like that, well, I'm in this, I'm in it to win it. Not, I don't mean that in a even financial sense, really. I just mean, I'm just going to go for it.
Yeah. I think, just go for it. I mean, you could take wine, for example. I didn't know anything about wine at the time, and I was a busser at this fine dining restaurant, and a glass of wine, and the sommelier picked it up and smelled it and told me what grape was in it, the country that it came from, the country that the oak barrel came from, and I thought, this is amazing.
Yeah.
With no marketing and just using our senses. Here's what I thought I knew about it, but there's a mystery inside of something that seems obvious. And so that was one where I went gung-ho with it. And so over the course of 2 years, I went from bussing tables to being the sommelier and the supervisor there. And I have a bookshelf filled with wine books from all the different regions.
Wow.
Became certified through the Court of Master Sommeliers level 1, so caveat there. But fell in love with that before I got into distilling. But I do believe that what we do for a living is a lens through which we see the world. And so in the world of wine, I was seeing the world through geography and geology and science and art. And I tell you, grapes have a wonderful travel agent because they grow in some of the most wonderful places in the world. But you learn about culture and you learn about all different things. And so that was one example of started with a glass of wine and ended up with an entire way to see life. And there have been many. Hospitality as a whole, the way you see the life through a hospitality lens, or the way you see a life through a storyteller or a strategist or a narrative lens. Each one of those is kind of radically different and has kind of pulled me into it.
Well, that's the thing I want to kind of end with today is about, because you've mentioned the storytelling so many times. And, as a therapist, that was trying to get someone to tell their story was kind of the main idea of the therapy. So I'm interested, just say more about the value of storytelling, especially as a millennial, maybe, from the vantage point of your generation.
Yeah. Generations like to tell stories about themselves, and I think they like to have narratives about other generations as well. And that can be helpful, that can be harmful. But I think if we're in the age of information right now, information doesn't mean meaning, as we've seen. It just means data. But in order to create something of value out of information, you have to weave it together. And when you weave it together with emotion, and when you weave it together with empathy, you usually end up with a story that somebody else can relate to and somebody else can connect with. And so maybe millennials and storytelling, we have the rise of AI, and AI is going to, I think, play a huge role in many different forms of art, where we will be able to create our own playlists of music that is exactly the music we want to listen to, and the paintings that speak to us in exactly the way that we want to be spoken to, and all of these narratives and stories through different mediums. And then we're going to come, I think then we'll get tired of it, and it'll become commoditized, and we'll go back to the importance of art and the importance of storytelling, that it's not about the actual expression, it turns out. And it's not always about the emotions that it invokes in us, but it is how it connected us to something else and someone else and something larger than ourselves. And so the power to tell a story and the mediums through which we choose to do it and how we choose to do it are all going to be things that millennials will continue to evolve, and following generations will continue to evolve. But I think a lot of millennials right now are shaping some of the businesses that are going to be advancing these technologies. So from a technology perspective, playing a big role on what stories are, how they're told, and ultimately the meaning that a story will play in our lives, from something that is self-reflective to something that, again, reconnects us as people, maybe.
Well, in therapy, there's this term called cathexis, and it was borrowed from electrical engineering, but it means a connection. If you have a cathexis, then that's the connection you're talking about. And so and if I think about millennials, I think, they specialize more in cathexis than boomers did. Boomers thought more concretely, I think. But to me, actually, that is where you find the meaning is that you're searching for. It's not just something that you come up with in your mind. It has to do with a relationship to something else. And that would be my take on this. Is a big millennial contribution to society, is the whole how connections, how they do form, and that's how meaning is assigned to things.
That feels true. And to me, it was because of my parents and how they encouraged me to explore the world that got me there. So while, at least in my case, it might be a phenomenon that expresses itself in the millennial generation, I wonder how many seeds of that were planted before. I don't know. But I love that. It sounds like it comes from sci-fi. It sounds like an alien planet.
Cathexis.
Yeah, where you might see a Star Trek episode take place on Cathexis. Horrible if you're wearing a red shirt. But anyway, yeah, I think that's the beautiful overplay between the generations. I had this idea for a play that would change slightly every night. And sort of the actors would change a line, and over time, over the course of its run, it would become a totally different play. And in a sense, every single night is a generation, because every single night the experience was just what was witnessed there, and then the next night it was slightly different. But that's their perception of what the play was about. So you ask the different generations what the play was about, you'll get slightly different answers.
Wow.
And they talk to each other. They're talking about a different experience, but it's interrelated as well. And so you have some kind of cross dialogue, and it can help sort of propagate themes and things of that nature.
Well, that's a very positive note to think about. The one thing that I think about for millennials is, when I was, young, having kids, getting married, going to grad school, buying houses and stuff. Like I bought a house 40 years ago. Well, it was expensive, but we were able to do it. We were able to make the mortgage payment and make the down payment. I had student loans, they weren't easy to pay off, but I was able to pay them off. And it just seems like it's a little more difficult for millennials to be able to buy a house, or if they go to college, then their student loans are just so gigantic, they're just like overwhelming. That to me seems like the hardship that I've seen in my
goodness. At least I agree with you. It seems like, okay, work to live, live to work, or is it just now work?
Right.
Because a 9 to 5, I haven't seen that concept in a while.
Right.
Now that it is 24/7 communication, and both partners out in the world working a lot of hours. I do think that paradigm has shifted, and there's like work-life integration in a way. um, withholding judgment on it to some regard, because work can be a powerful tool to express who we are. But I think we do have to sort of step back and look holistically at, okay, we're all working. How are we going to define success in our lives? Financially, it's harder to get the house. It's harder to make some of these moves by and large.
Well, I mean, I think part of it is because the top 1% has far more of the wealth in the country than the bottom 50%. And that it wasn't that bad when we were growing, when we were, my generation were doing this. That's what I think is one of the big problems.
I think it is Ray Dalio who talks about that statistic of the wealth gap being one of the most dangerous sort of data points to look at and to try and figure out how to reverse, or it's going to be a bigger challenge for people to rise up, because the narrative was that each generation would maybe be elevated slightly than the one before it. And that's being called into question. And so,
definitely,
as you mentioned earlier, crisis equals opportunity. So we are now at the opportunity and crisis stage. And the question will be, how much louder does the crisis need to be before we capitalize on the opportunity it represents to change some things that are affecting us systemically for the better?
Well, let's leave crisis and opportunity like this,
all right,
with their fists up at each other. And thank you so much for coming. I've really enjoyed this.
Thank you for having me, Howard. I was honored to be asked.
Well, my pleasure. And I thought we did a really good podcast.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you, Howard.